All those in favor? Brian?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
I am also an aye, show that it approved unanimously. Administrative reports. Las Brisas Academy School Report. Ms. Schaefer.
President Aguirre, Dr. Schuff, members of the board, we're so excited to share all of the amazing things happening at Las Brisas this year. I have our assistant principal, Miss Malley, with us tonight, and our instructional coach, Miss Benson, as well as one of our teachers and some of our amazing students who will present at the end. But we're going to save the best for last, so we're going to talk first, and the kids are going to go at the end. So our vision and mission is something we got brought back to this summer when we worked with our teacher leaders, and we refined it a little bit just to make sure it matched who we were as a school and what we all collectively believed in. So I'll give you just a second to look through our vision and mission, and then I'm going to talk about how it connects to the work we're doing this year. Right there, you also see the word elevate, and that is the word and the theme we've chosen this year for our staff and then to pass on to our students because we are doing these things that are in our vision and mission each day. We're just going to elevate it. We're going to be bringing them to a higher position and making all the things we do even more impressive than we already were. We chose elevate because it means that there's already something there. We already know we have an incredible teaching staff, incredible students, incredible families, and we just wanted to tighten up some things to make sure that we're meeting that mission and vision even tighter, really focusing on the collaborative relationships, the lifelong learners, and the creativity of our students. And you see pictures of all of our teachers. The top left is our teacher leadership retreat, which we had 1 of 2 sessions over the summer with our teachers. The top right is our new teacher orientation, and then the bottom was all of our staff right after we had the welcome off. And I included them because we can't do this work without our incredible teachers. I know we have a dynamite teaching staff who is, absolutely committed to this mission and vision and who is elevating what they do for kids every single day. So with that, I'm going to pass this off to Ms. Benson, who's going to share a little bit about what we're elevating.
Here we go. So we chose these areas to focus on to elevate this year. We chose these different areas for a few different reasons. We looked at teacher data, parent survey data, research. So we took all of that and decided these were going to be our focus areas. So you just saw some pictures from teacher leadership. So one of the ways that we're elevating our teacher leaders this year is we had our district teacher leader kickoff that was amazing over the summer. And then we followed up at our site to just continue that work and continue that momentum. We're also meeting continuously at school and just really focusing on how can we empower our teachers to be leaders on the campus and lead not only their grade level, but other teachers on the campus that are focused on perhaps like the same content area as them. We're also focusing on our professional learning communities and elevating those PLCs to get to the next stage of our PLCs, which is really focusing on data. And that's another way that we're empowering our teachers. Let's look at the student data. Let's look at it consistently and empower our teachers to make instructional decisions based off the data that they have from their students. And then, of course, we focused on instructional alignment that oftentimes gets overlooked, right? Alignment, sometimes people think of it as, are we following the curriculum and are we teaching the standards? But alignment can be so much more than that. So it's really digging in deeper to, are we aligning every piece of information we're putting in front of those kids to connect to the learning target for that day? Are we aligning our teacher responses to the students? Are we staying on track with our activities and our questions to make sure that everything is lining up, to make sure the information is as clear as possible for them? We are also elevating our student engagement and our ownership. We're having the kids really track their own data and take ownership over, all right, this is where I'm currently at. What am I going to do to get to the next step? And one of the theater plays that we do, we also have our community outreach, maybe I won't say outreach, our community events like our cookies and Thank you, Cookies and Conversations, which we're having as a result of our parent surveys. So just doing some work there to really bring our community together. Now, on this slide, you see at the very top, we have our goals. And again, you see those PLCs, professional learning communities. So that's the same goal that I just talked about, elevating to the next stage. And we really believe that by focusing on that goal and reaching that goal, it's going to impact these other 3 areas. So by reaching that PLC goal, we're going to get 70% of our students to at or near mastery for the fractions domain in math. We're going to get 75% of our students at or near mastery for the reading for information on that state assessment. And then that last one, time in learning. So time in learning is a goal that's centered around attendance. So not only are we working on increasing our attendance and reducing the number of students who aren't in class, one of the things we're doing is also looking at decreasing our number of students who are out of school or in school suspension. So supporting teachers with how can we support these students in the classroom so they can stay in the classroom, social emotional support, and things like that. All right, let me hand it over to Megan to go a little deeper.
That is very tall. All right, so we talked a little bit about what we're elevating as far as like our professional learning communities and things like that. So we're specifically looking at our teacher leadership, which we mentioned a little bit about the summer program that we had. We had 2 summer sessions with our teacher leaders where we really focused on ways to support them and how they can help in their PLCs. We've also done peer observations with our teacher leaders. They were able to go and do math observations and see our new the LEDC structure and provide feedback, which led to really great conversations on ways they can do the vertical alignment. Instructional alignment, we have, just like Melinda talked about, we're focusing not on only the curriculum, but on how we can dig a little bit deeper for our alignment. Are the questions aligned? Are we providing correct responses? Those parts of things. Student engagement and ownership. We've created a student success team with different teachers and our counselors where we're really focusing on our tier 1 instruction. How are we making sure that students are in class learning? How are we making sure structures are school wide so that all students can find success? And then for our community events, we have our Fine Arts Night where our CHAMPS teachers put on a really great performance and highlighted some of the really great programs that they're doing in the classrooms. And our Dia de los Muertos, which you're going to be able to see some of our ofrendas in a little bit, which highlights our signature program and kind of the performing arts piece. It combined both. Oops. There we go. So we talked about meeting our alignment goal, which was a huge goal that we really focused on through all of our professional developments this trimester. And we were super excited through our walkthroughs and, observations that we had. Our teachers were fantastic at their alignment. They blew our goal out of the park. And so one way that we wanted to celebrate them was through our alignment cart. So we brought around treats for them that were all in lines or mints. And then we were able to have our students celebrate them as well, which you'll see in this video. Oh, yes. So as we were walking around with the cart, the students were just so excited that we were celebrating their teachers. They came out of their classrooms and started chanting along. And then that led through our entire building, which is great because it echoes. So all of the kids were just so excited to, see what was going on and cheer on their teachers.
Okay. We are blessed with 2 signature programs at Las Brisas because we like to have double the fun and double the learning. So our first program is our dual language immersion. We just celebrated with our Dia de los Muertos presentation. We have one of our wonderful dual language teachers, Senora Lopez, who will come up in just a minute tonight. We are really moving this also into not only the instruction that's happening and the culture, knowledge and building that's happening, but also the connection to the arts, which is our second program, which This year, we're just absolutely taking to the next level. We're looking at how we're making a school, our school somewhere where you walk in and know that we are an art school. We're elevating that the students' artwork is connected to the work they're doing. And we're going to be starting an arts committee where we're working with the arts institutions downtown that we have access to also be elevating the work we're doing. So that's some exciting things that are coming there. And with that, to share some of their arts that are connected to the dual language program, Senora Lopez, would you like to come up with your students? You ready, kids? This is the fun part. Come on up. All right, we got a step stool for you. I wore my heels, so I didn't need them, but you guys might want it, right? Or do you want to come up in front? Which would you prefer? I don't know. Steps, why don't you come up here? Come on up here. 1, 2, there's 4. All right, Mr. Daxton, will you share what your ofrenda is, who it is honoring?
So this is honoring my great grandma. She was my grandpa's mom, and she was very kind, according to my mom.
Thank you so much. You can stay up here because we're going to talk to you guys. You ready? Who are you honoring?
My uncle, and basically honoring my mom's brother.
Very nice, thank you. Come on. Ready? Who are you honoring?
I am honoring my great grandpa.
Very nice. Come on with it.
I am honoring my uncle.
Uncle. What is it like to get to make these in class and get to talk about these with the rest of your class? How does it feel?
A little nerve-wracking, but also fun.
Nerve-wracking tonight or nerve-wracking in front of your friends? Both?
Both.
Here, we have one more to share. Will you share here? Who are you making with your friend? Who are you on? Flip it around for you.
Like, who would I make it for? I made this for my grandpa that passed away. So this is just like about my grandpa and what he did for a job and stuff.
Nice. And I see you all wrote in Spanish about them on the front. Was that hard?
No.
How did you do that?
Because the teacher had it on a paper and we were just copying off.
I didn't know that. Or I wouldn't. What do you love about the language program?
It's very nice, and it's good to learn another language other than one, because you can understand more people. Because most of the people don't get to understand. So, like, let's say that someone speaks Spanish and you only speak English, and another person speaks English and Spanish, they can communicate. It's like when like somebody doesn't know something in Spanish, and the other person does know, like you can like help them out. One time I met somebody that speaks Spanish and I didn't understand anything they said, so I went into dual language.
Now you can understand it better? Awesome. And these are second graders, so let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, guys. Should we ask them if they have questions for you? Do you all have any questions for them?
Brian?
Those people. Show them your old friend.
I would say that's amazing work. There's 2 words that come to mind: artistry and honesty. Thank you so much.
Ms. Bixler?
Yes, I also want to thank those students for being here and taking on the task of presenting before a board. I know how nerve-wracking that can be, and good job. You students have done an excellent job as far as that. I also had a chance to see that presentation and the work done by those students, and they were very, very impressive. Excellent job out there at Las Brisas. Congratulations.
Michael?
He's unfrozen now.
Ask him again.
Michael?
The highlight of our meeting, we can see that the more students participating and they've done a job. So, can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
What language was that?
Mr. Todd, we didn't catch your question. Do you mind re-asking it?
I'm sorry. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great. I just wanted to thank the students. They've done a great job. One of the highlight of our board meetings is seeing the successes of our students, and Las Brisas has kept up and done a great job. So thank you, students. I do have one question. A couple times you mentioned about keeping students in class. It was one of your goals, and I was just curious a little bit about how you're doing that as far as what are you changing or what are you doing differently to keep the kids in class and keep your time and learning goals up?
Absolutely. So if there's ever a time a student needs to be removed, we do remove them. We're not saying, every second of the day they need to be in class. We know there's discipline issues that they do need to be removed. So I just want to, I don't think I was clear about that in the beginning. But in order to keep them in there, we're working with our counselor and our student success team, who's a group of teachers, to implement strategies for our teachers to implement then in the classroom. So we know that social emotional learning is more than just, do I know how to get along or can I talk about my feelings? It's also all those soft skills of how to disagree appropriately, how to make friends, how to ask to play. And so all of that shows up on the playground, right? Yeah. And if our kids, that's where we saw the highest level of our suspensions happening was after a playground incident. So we're trying to keep our students or supporting them in agreeing more on the playground, having those supports and lessons on how to get along so that they're not choosing to act in aggressive behaviors that then require office referrals, that then require suspensions. So that is anything from, we have some kids in different boys and girls groups, so we're working on those skills. We have individual levels. Some of them work with myself or Miss Malley as a group or in a check-in, check-out system. And then all the teachers also work on implementing it in the classroom too. So it kind of depends on the student need, the grade, but those are the strategies we implement. It just looks different depending on the child.
Thank you. And just to clarify, I did not at all take from you that you were not removing students.
Okay, just want to make sure. Like we're not, if they're fighting, we're not leaving them in the room for that. Just want to clarify for everybody. Okay.
No, you did just fine. I'm just curious
Thank
a
you.
little bit more detail. So thank you so much.
So were you all nervous?
Yes.
Yes. It wasn't that bad though, right? No, it wasn't that scary. All right. You did it in class? All right, just right. You guys did an excellent job. And thank you so much for sharing parts of your family with us. So thank you very, very much.
Up, guys. Mr. Parks might have something to say. Question for them? No, you're good? Okay. Thank you, guys. You can go sit down. And a huge shout out to Senor Lopez, who's here, who guided these amazing second graders into making these and presenting them and writing their amazing essays. So thank you for that. Any other questions for me or the team? And I already lost the clicker, so here it is. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer.
Yes,
Oh.
Principal Shearer?
We do have
Yes.
Yes, a quick question. I appreciate the goal you have set, your staff has set before themselves. And I absolutely agree with them. The one that you have that interests me is the increase in student engagement in their learning. Clearly, the Diabas Lamortos was a good example of that. Could you share with us some other examples of how you're increasing student engagement and learning?
Yeah, one of the probably most simple way is our students are tracking their own data. Oh, thought I was looking at him. Now I'm looking at myself. All right, I'm going to move. They are tracking their own data. And so, for example, we walked in, Ms. Camp and I were doing walkthroughs, and we asked a kid, hey, how are you doing on this objective? He whips out his data folder. He's like, let me tell you. And he pulls out all these papers. He's like, well, I'm proficient. So I'm proficient on this objective. He had tracked it in his folder. And so by doing that, the teachers will set goals at the beginning of the unit. or the beginning of the standard, and then the kids set their own goals, and then as they're going, the students are putting their own data in, which then motivates them to want to achieve better, ask more questions when they're stuck. And so that's probably the simplest strategy we're doing. And then we're also trying to infuse fun things throughout the day that are also motivational to learning. So we're doing on Thursday our trimester awards ceremony. We're also going to be planning some pep rallies before the assessments just to get kids excited to show off their big brains.
Thank you, Principal Shaver. I'm sorry about misspeaking your last name, but terrific idea. I like the idea of the students holding themselves accountable. Terrific.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Item 2.2, Trust Attorney Administrator Report. Dr. Schuff.
President McGuire, members of the board, the governing board requested some additional information on our district's involvement with the trust, the expenses around those things, and overall what that provides. So the trust essentially provides our umbrella insurance. That's their primary aspect that they provide. And then we also receive pooled support for legal services. So in here, in the executive summary, is some background information around those questions, and I just stand ready to discuss or answer any additional questions.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Dr. Schuff. I was the one that brought this forward because it was confusing to me, and I kind of wanted to bring it up to the parents and the taxpayers because it's a big ticket item for the district, and I just wanted to make sure everybody understood what it was going for. The liability and the caps and what we pay for is actually, it's a pretty good deal, compared to what we see out in the private marketplace, and it protects the school from obviously lawsuits. And I was just having difficulty because it covers a lot of expenses here at the district, and I didn't understand as a board member how many things it really does cover. So it's a great program. I'm glad we can participate in it. Thank you for your research.
You're welcome.
Ms. Bixler.
I have no questions, Mr. Aguirre.
Mr. Todd.
My only question, and I want to make sure everybody understands, we do pay for these services, and it looks like our rates have gone up considerably over the years. Some of that is because we took out COVID coverage, but if we look at the last table, my understanding is that's our legal. Our number of claims has gone up considerably. I think the board needs to take a look at that and identify why the claims since 2019 to 2022 have gone from 28 to 111, if I'm understanding that table correctly.
So I can provide some background on that. You would expect to see the number of incidents increase because our enrollment has increased. So in the last 4 to 5 years, we've increased enrollment by nearly 25%. So you would expect to see that number perhaps keep pace with our overall enrollment percentage of increase. Also, with a change in leadership on the governing board, with additional questions, board policy changes this governing board has made, we have had a number of additional incidents this year that would be not necessarily claims. They aren't legal claims against the district. However, they are requests for legal services made by the district.
So can staff in the next board report perhaps give a listing of the 111 times that Gus Rosenfeld has provided services so we know what those are? I'm not aware of 111 times we've asked for it, but I'm sure it's there, obviously. I just like to know.
You'll see in the executive summary that increased costs were due to policy guidance for board meetings, the board organization meeting, board policy revisions, complaints by board members to the Attorney General, engagement of the attorney to attend some of our board meetings, public records requests, review of legal contracts or agreements, as well as we did have a couple of atypical employee or student-related matters that were more extensive than they had been in prior years.
So basically, I'm not hearing Michael, so. What this comes down to, I guess, what I'm seeing is anytime a public records request is issued, we have to get legal involved to make sure that we did everything correctly. Basically, what it comes down to is anything that we have to do to make sure that we are legal, we're calling the attorney, whether it's public records request, whether it's them needing to attend a board meeting to answer more questions. What are some of the others? Calling the attorney, having to deal with the attorney general, board organization meetings, all of those things are costing the district a little bit. Well, the rates are going higher for the following year.
Correct. It's based on prepaid
So
legal.
we're not feeling the pain this year, but realistically, we're going to feel the pain next year, kind of like one would on their car insurance.
Exactly.
Yes, it will hit. Another example this year, there were a number of legislative changes. So that's a number of policy revisions.
policies
So
on
we'll
that one,
see
right.
more things where the attorney services will review our policy changes for the first and second readings. We did one big batch of them. We'll have another big batch of them coming up. So those are some examples that are in this current year. And there were some of those as well last year.
Thank you, Dr. Schuff. Is there any other discussion on this topic? Ms. Bixler?
President Aguirre, I have no other questions.
Mr. Todd? Brian?
No other question.
I have no other questions.
Item 2.3, school report card administrative report. Mrs. Camp.
I was debating if I was getting on the stool tonight. Governing board president, members of the governing board in person and online. It's my pleasure to present to you tonight an overview of our state A through F letter grade accountability system. I am going to present and further explain for you how letter grades are determined for each of our schools. So A through F letter grades are assigned up to a maximum of 100 points, and the letter grades are determined by the range of points earned as stated in this slide. So you'll see that 100 points to 84 and about a half is an A, and so on and so on and so on. The K-8 model is built on the following categories. So 30 points or 30% is proficiency. 50 points or 50% is growth. Acceleration and readiness make up 10%, and EL proficiency makes up the final 10%. I'm going to dig into each of these categories throughout the presentation. And we will start with proficiency first, which makes up the 30%. So there are two ways that you can earn proficiency points or percentages. These proficiency points are determined by a student's proficiency level. There are 4 performance levels on AASA. Minimally proficient, which is level 1, partially proficient, level 2, proficient, level 3, and highly proficient, level 4. Each of the performance levels earn the following points. Minimally proficient students earn 0 points. Partially proficient, 0.6 of a point. Proficient, 1 point. And then highly proficient, 1.3. The proficiency points can also be determined by what is called stability proficiency. This measurement takes into account students that have been in the same school for multiple years and their proficiency performance. The purpose of this measure is to reward students for longevity and their performance with that longevity. So again, depending on which is higher, that will be awarded to the school. If your proficiency points are higher or your stability proficiency is higher, they will take the higher of the two. I'm happy. Oh, go
I have
ahead.
a question.
Yes.
So are you telling me that these letter grades are not just based off of if a child's learning, but if they've been in a school for a long period of time and maybe aren't learning as quickly as someone who just came in a year? So a child who's been in that school for 1 year, who scored higher on proficiency, that is not weighted as high as a child who's been in the school for 4 years but didn't score as high on a proficiency test? That's the way that the state looks at this?
So let me just clarify it. I'm going to look over here to Dr. Sloat, who might have to save me. So 2 ways you can get 30% of your proficiency, and they will calculate it based on the number of children in a particular category. So let me see if I can give you the formula. Number of students falling in a particular category is multiplied by the points distribution, right? So let's say we have 200 students falling into highly proficient. They're going to multiply that by 1.3, and they're going to divide it by the total number of students tested. That's going to give you a percentage, right? They'll do that for all of your students that score in those levels. No points for anyone who scores in minimally proficient. They will do the same thing for your proficiency stability. So what they're trying to do is equitably say, do you have proficiency points and do you have proficiency stability, which means you have students who stay with you longer and are performing better. If you do, you get more points for that.
Okay.
I am happy to report 6 out of our 7 schools earned more points in stability. That means that children who stay with us longer perform better.
Okay.
That's a good thing for us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, growth points, 50 points for growth. So this is a graph that's just going to show you what I'm going to try to describe. The growth calculation starts by grouping everyone with the same score from the prior year in the state of Arizona like a cluster or a cohort. You and I score 25 on AASA. We're in the same cluster. For that group of students, the state then looks at the current year end of school score. This produces a range of growth. So we all started here and then we spread out. So this produces a range of growth across a particular cluster or cohort. The range of growth is then determined as low growth, average growth, or high growth. Every cluster of students for every single score on the AASA will have a range of growth. So what does that mean? Points are determined for student growth percentile as follows. If a student had prior year high proficiency, so now I'm up here in this quadrant, right? Prior year high proficiency and low growth this current year, 0 points. Okay? If a student was highly proficient last year and had average growth within their cluster, 1 point. If a student was highly proficient last year and had high growth this year, 1 point. What is important to know, and the reason I want to talk about highly proficient students, is even if a student is highly proficient last year and they go into this cohort and they fan the growth. Someone will be low growth, someone will be medium, and someone will be high in all categories. In essence, this model says kids that come into the school year with the lowest achievement will get more points if we can boost their academic growth the most. So take a look at the minimally proficient students. The minimally proficient students last year, if they get average or high growth, they will score you the most growth points. EL is another category. EL proficiency is determined by the number of EL students who score in comparison to the state average of reclassification percentage. So if your reclassification percentage is higher than the state average, your school can earn up to 5 points for that. EL proficiency is also determined by movement within the EL categories from one level to another, and 5 points are awarded for that as well. So, for example, if a student moves from pre-emergent to proficient, they can earn up to 3 points. Okay, we get more points for the more levels that we move an EL student. It's also important to note that your EL students earn you proficiency EL growth, proficiency, and overall growth. They hit you 3 times. So we really want to focus on our EL students because they can earn us a lot of points, right? I think that's all I had on that one. Okay, acceleration and readiness. The amount of points that a school can earn for acceleration and readiness is only 10 points. But there are way more than 10 points that you can get, okay? But a school is limited to only 10 points. Lots of different ways you can get those 10 points. First way you can get the 10 points is the 8th grade math performance. The intent of this metric is to incentivize schools to increase their percent of highly proficient and decrease their percent of minimally proficient 8th graders from the prior year, right? So we want to get more kids in highly proficient. We want less kids in minimally proficient. You get points for that, up to 5 points. EL minimally proficient 3rd graders. Reducing the EL minimally proficient 3rd grade students from one year to the next or the current year percent minimally proficient is less than 12%. This is tied directly to the move on when reading law. Okay, so again, we want less children in minimally proficient in 3rd grade, and if we have less children in minimally proficient, 5 points are awarded for that. Chronic absenteeism is another way of earning acceleration and readiness points. Reducing the percent of chronic absenteeism from one year to the next, or having an overall percentage of less than 4% of students identified as chronic absenteeism. So let me tell you what a student who's identified as chronic absenteeism is. Any student who's missing more than 10 days in a school year is identified as chronically absent. Now, if a student is chronically ill, totally different, right? Let's say we have a child who is a cancer patient and they have to miss a lot of school, right? And because of their treatments, they identify as chronically ill, they're filling out medical paperwork for that, and those children are identified and they are removed from this calculation. Subgroup improvement, also worth 6 points. For this improvement, bless you, for this improvement, it's really just subgroup improvement from one year to the next. And the subgroup that we're looking at, white, Hispanic, Native American, Alaskan Indian, Asian, African American, Pacific Islander, 2 or more races. So those are the subgroups that the state will pull and see if we are if our subgroups are more proficient than they were in years prior. And then finally, another way of acceleration readiness points being earned is special education inclusion. The intent of this metric is to reward schools that have greater than the state average of special education students in the general education classroom for at least 80% of the day. And you can earn up to 2 points for that. Okay, there are also bonus points. You can earn a total of 3. That's not true. Yes, you can earn a total of 3 bonus points. I lied again. Nope, there's more than that. It's 5. 5 bonus points. And this is indicated by special education program enrollment. So this is a little bit of a protection for schools that have special education programs self-contained on their campus, right? Those schools should not be penalized for having self-contained programs on their campus. So it says schools with high populations of FAY, full academic year, students enrolled in special education will earn bonus points. A school's current FAY, special education program enrollment percentage, if it is greater than 80% of the statewide percentage, 2 points. If it is less than, 0 points. And then science proficiency. So science proficiency is awarded to schools up to 3 points for a science achievement of your full academic students in the year. If a school's current year percentage of proficient students in science is greater than 1 standard deviation above the statewide average, you can earn up to 3 points. If it is greater than the state average and less than 1 standard deviation above the average, 1.5 points. Just so you know, I don't figure out the standard deviation, but we do have people to help us with that. And the state obviously has all of these formulas. So you're wondering, what does that look like for us? So I want to start with Blue Horizons because they are a little bit tricky this year. They are a brand new school. They do not have prior year performance. So when we talked about the stability question just a moment ago, the Blue Horizons campus can only get stability points for 1 year. They cannot get 2 year, they cannot get 3 year, right? The other thing that's important to notice about Blue Horizons is last year they had K-5. So the only students who provide proficiency points for Blue Horizons are 4th graders and 5th graders. That is why the state will not provide them with a letter grade for their first year, right? So they kind of get this, just first year is not reported, and then next year they will get their letter grade. So going across a couple things just to highlight. The proficiency points, that's in the 1, 2, 3, third column there. Again, you can get 30 points for proficiency. And you'll see that some of our schools have a really high level of proficiency. Estrella is sitting at 20 points for proficiency, followed by Estrella Mountain, 19, followed by Las Brisas, 16, and so on. This really does follow our trend of socioeconomic status in our schools. If you look at the growth points, we had tremendous amount of growth at our schools. Can only get 50 points. Estrella coming in at 47 out of the 50. And Rainbow Valley, 43. Las Brisas, 43. West Star, 42. Liberty, 39. And Freedom, 38. So a really great push in growth, and I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. EL points, I think this is an area of opportunity. So when I look up here, I really think we should be getting all 10 of our EL points if we have enough EL students. Notice that Estrella's is blank. They do not have at least 10 EL students. So if you don't have at least 10 students, that particular category is not weighed against you. Acceleration and readiness. Again, I think this is an opportunity. We should be getting all 10 points. I don't care how we get them, right? That should be something that we really focus on and get all 10 of those points. You'll then see total points earned, and then your added bonus points. So all of our schools received at least one of the bonus points. Most of them received the 2 bonus points for special education inclusion. And then Estrella and Westar also received 1.5 additional bonus points for their science proficiency. And so finally, in between the bonus points and the percentage earned, you will see points are calculated out of 100, except Estrella is not, because they don't have at least 10 EL students FAY, full academic year. So they divide their score by 90, okay? And what that flushes out to be is that both Estrella and Westar are in the A category. Las Brisas at 81 falls into the B category. Rainbow Valley, 71.8, really close, almost into the B category there. Liberty is at 65 and Freedom is at 69. And this is how our letter grades distributed this school year. And I stand ready for any questions that you might have.
Brian?
Well, you lost me about halfway through.
It's complicated, isn't it?
But I took notes.
Okay, good.
So, the testing explain how the testing is done to come up with these numbers, if you would. Like, obviously, we're being tested somewhere. Or the kids are being tested for this. Could you explain that?
Sure. So every spring, in the month of April, and we have a window. In the month of April, the students take the AASA in English Language Arts and in math. And if they are in 5th grade and 8th grade, they take the science assessment. And so those tests are administered online in a secure state portal. And as soon as we hit submit, the state has the student test.
I followed some of the logic through this as I was writing my notes here. And, one concern I have, if I have of any through this, is, are we teaching to the test here? I mean, do you know where I'm going? I mean, we can get caught up real fast and going, okay, well, we need a better grade, so we need to move stuff around. I mean, what are we doing? I mean, are we worried about that? I mean, obviously we're worried about letter grades, but, I mean, how's that really affecting the district?
Sure. So I would say that a letter grade does not define a school. So it is a point of data for that particular school, but the culture and the climate and the teachers and the experience that students receive on a daily basis, that's really what defines a school. Do we want student achievement to increase every year? Absolutely. But it is one point in time. The students take that one assessment in April each year.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really have no questions except what Mr. Parks asked already and would agree. It's very confusing, and it's unfortunate for the public that this comes down to a letter grade. We see growth when we see those letters go up, but I just think that this grade, and we'll just ask everybody to keep that in mind and encourage our teachers. We are working to bring this up, and we're kind of in a strange grading system, if you will, with the state for a lot of this.
Ms. Bixler?
Yes, thank you, President Aguirre. Ms. Camp, a couple of questions. First of all, this rubric is very interesting. It has some interesting aspects to it. Is there a description within text of the rubric itself, of the descriptors within the rubric, to show the benchmark points, the break points from one rubric advancement to another? Is that written down somewhere?
Let me see if I could answer your question. There are business rules, and you can get these online for some light reading. And then each school actually can go into their letter grade through the Arizona Department of Ed, and they can see exactly how they got their scores for each of the categories. And so our principals have already had some time to look at those, and then also identify, at the some at the student level, who should we really be focusing on to ensure that we are supporting, especially in tier 2 and tier 3 interventions.
Okay, thank you. That not quite what I was hoping for as far as the descriptors, but I'm glad there's something we can look at, because it is a very complex rubric that we're talking about. My second question involves the stability, and I really like the idea of showing how the longer a student is at a school, the better they are. That I think is a terrific thing to know. My concern, though, is that I think it bypasses an idea that I call value added. That if we have a student that comes in at a very low place and then suddenly grows remarkably, we don't seem to see any kind of recognition of that value added that we've added.
So I think that is in the growth model. When we were looking at, I was trying to go back so I could show you which slide it's on. But if you look at the growth slide, I think that is really the value added slide, which is saying a child who comes in minimally proficient, if we grow them, if we grow them and they receive high growth, we are rewarded many more. We are rewarded the most points.
All right.
So that is the part of the value add, Ms. Bixler.
Right. Thank you very much. That does explain it. I think that's an important thing to recognize. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have no questions.
I'll just say one final thing. Our teachers worked tremendously hard last year to ensure that they were in school, that our children were in school, and that they were teaching at high levels. Yes, we have many opportunities, but we are extremely proud of our schools for their scores. We are extremely proud that we had two schools move into the A category. And this is showing that we are keeping our focus on what's most important, and that's students and the education that they receive.
Thank you, Mrs. Camp. Item 2.4, quarterly financial report. Ms. Strickler.
President Aguirre, members of the governing board, the quarterly financial report is presented for you that provides the information context of where we're at quarter for the entire fiscal year. We've presented this slide deck each quarter now for several years, and just want to ask if you have any additional questions or clarifications for Ms. Strickler.
Brian?
No questions. Thank you.
Michael?
No questions, thank you.
Paul?
President Aguirre, no, I have no question.
And I have none also.
Thank you for your preparation, Ms. Strickler. Additionally, for 2.5, I'm sorry, I'm running right along. You take 2.5.
Item 2.5, attendance enrollment report and school newsletters. Dr. Schaff.
I knew we were next. My apologies. Again, we have our attendance and enrollment reports and ready for any questions the board may have.
Questions? Hearing none. Item 3.1, governing board updates. Brian?
Well, I got the opportunity to do the trunk or treats both with
No questions from me.
at Freedom and Rainbow. We had a blast. The only downside, thank the Lord for the PTO out there. I think they refreshed our candy 4 times. We literally went through 500 pieces of candy. I've never seen so many kids in costumes. It was so much fun meeting all the parents and the kids in both Rainbow and Freedom Elementary. And the interesting thing is, as a parent, I actually dressed my kids up in dinosaurs, and they had more fun doing that than they did running around for candy. So that was a lot of fun to watch. So thank you for everybody's support on that.
Michael?
Just one quick update. I asked him to be more involved in our district, talking about a few communication issues that we can work on together in the future. I think overall it was a very positive meeting. I'm very encouraged to start gaining his support of our district and look forward to a long-term relationship with the city of Goodyear.
Ms. Bixler?
Yes, President Guire, thank you very much. And I'm going to apologize right up front for the length of what I'm about to say. In my defense, all I can say is if there was ever a holiday that was designed for a K-8 school district, it's going to be the celebration of All Hallows Eve. There was a lot going on. So first of all, since our last meeting, I got a chance to go to the Estrella Mountain School second and third grade vocal music presentation, and it was incredible. Great costumes. I saw ghosts, zombies, witches, skeletons, all kinds of things, princesses, random Mario with a magnificent mustache, Spider-Man, Hermione Granger from Hogwarts, an alien that appeared to be trying to abduct one of our students, Ninja Turtles, Ears of Corn. It was incredible, wonderful experience, and very, very well done. I congratulate Estrella Mountain on that vocal presentation. Next, I went to Las Brisas Academy, where I saw their parade put on by the PTO, and it was great. Some very fun things to see, and what I found most fascinating and well done by that was the orchestration of the movement of the students to and from the site where they were allowed to participate in the parade. It was a great experience to see the 8th graders handing out candy to the kinder through 7th grade students. Excellent to see that. As far as the parade itself, there were a number of things that happened there. It was just great. My favorite had to be the student that showed up in a suit that was all orange, and you got to understand this had a matching tie, and with that, then there were in black different things like pumpkins on this all orange suit. I later found out this was kind of a celebration of a character named David Simon Pumpkin out of Saturday Night Live, but it was really wonderful. And again, the traffic flow and the organization of that, kudos. That went without a hitch, and it was great. Later on, I went over to Freedom Elementary School for their trunk or treat. Great support by the parents, and I've got to admit, one of my favorite things was the introduction of the Jurassic Parks and their trunk presentation with the dancing dinosaurs. The Parks family went all out, and it was great. From there, we're over to Rainbow Valley and their carnival and trunk or treat. It was fascinating because it was community sponsored. The whole thing was paid for by community support. Again, the return of the Jurassic Parks, had a giant chicken. I did discover that I need to spend a lot more time in elementary fiction, because there were a lot of characters, both not only the students, but also the teachers, that I didn't recognize. And kind of got myself into a problem because I mistakenly recognized a student as a Ninja Turtle when in fact it was already Deadpool. And so I was corrected and put straight by that, and I felt lucky that I got out with just a warning on that. Then from there, went over to the a tour of Kerr Elementary, and I want to thank board member Todd for asking that we do that. That was a fascinating experience. Members of the district administration and building administration, along with 3 of the board members, did attend that, and it was a great thing to see. It was really wonderful to see that. The student docents that we talked to at that tour were great, and they gave us a lot of really, really good information and were very, very inspirational. From there, back over to Las Brisas to see their K-5 celebration of family, and that was great. The performance by the students really, really showed why we have a signature program at Las Brisas. It was great, and more than that, we were lucky enough to get an impromptu tour by Brian from CORE that gave us a look at the new construction that's going on over there, and that was really, really insightful. So we appreciated that, and hopefully some positive news coming out of that construction as far as when we'll be able to use those classrooms. There was a prediction made, and hopefully that will pan out, and I hope that does happen. From there on to the Freedom Elementary School Family Thanksgiving, and it was normally, in my experience, as students get older in grade, you have less and less parent participation in events like this, and that did not hold true. The parent participation in this Thanksgiving celebration was incredible all the way up and down. It didn't matter if they were kinder or first, second, or third, all the way through 6th grade. There were a lot of parents there that were part of the celebration. So I congratulate Freedom on what they have done with that. And then finally at West Star, their carnival. Wow, I've got to tell you, it was wall-to-wall parents as far as the eye could see. It was incredible the turnout. Congratulations, Bogart and your staff, and especially the PTO over there. They did an incredible job with that. It was more fun than you could have imagined. The PTO did have a hot dog set up, and I did test out the hot dog. As much as I enjoyed that PTO presentation, the work they did, I've got to admit, the Chicago-style hot dog still is king, but thank you very much for everything that was done between now and the last board meeting. It was a terrific experience to be on the board, and one of the real perks of being a part of the school district. So thank you very much for all the schools and staffs that made it possible for me to be a part of it.
Thank you. I got to go to Truck or Treat at Rainbow, but I think most importantly, kind of one of the favorite things that I like to do and get to do is I went to Veterans Breakfast here at Liberty Elementary School. It's something that the school's been putting on for quite some time. It's always interesting to hear out in public, hear the word fight, patriot, patriotic. You hear all these terms, and then when you actually go to a Veterans Day event and you actually meet men and women who put their life on the line, that's a patriot. That's what the word fight actually means. Also got to go to the Veterans Day Parade, downtown Phoenix. Always a great event for my family. So all the veterans out there, again, thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for everything that you continue to do. Item 4.1, calls of the public. So every individual will get 3 minutes. It would be greatly appreciated that when your 3 minutes is up, that you simply just stop talking and move on. And let the next individual come up and have their time on the mic also. I have one here. There isn't a name or a telephone number. I'll hold it up. I won't say the address. but I'll hold it up. If this is anyone's handwriting, you forgot to put the name. The email address, it's hard for me to read. I don't know if it's Loretta. That sound familiar? 18185.
It's running the override.
Okay, so before we start, you have another one in here also.
Oh, then it's not me. Okay, somebody can have some addresses. I was like, it's okay, go on.
Sorry, I couldn't read your handwriting from the other room.
No worries. I apologize also. Whenever you're ready, sir, your time will start.
Hello to the board. Yeah. Hello to the board. My name is William Bretner, and I'm a community member of over 20 years. And my kids went to Estrella Mountain Elementary School back in the early 2000s. And I'd like to read a resolution here. And the resolution states, be it resolved that the Republican Legislative District 23 Republicans of Maricopa County, dated November 2nd, 2022. Whereas Liberty Elementary School District 25 board member Paul Bixler, known as a self-described transgender who testified at the AZ State House Education Committee that he supports talking with children about transsexual and gender issues without the parents' knowledge, as described in his testimony on the House Education Committee meeting. Whereas Paul Bixler, during Liberty School District 25 School Board meeting on September 26, stated that SB 1165, a bill passed by the AZ legislature and signed into law by Governor Ducey, which states that the AZ school sports teams for girls only have girls and boys on the teams that they represent, is unconstitutional. Whereas Paul Bixler violated his oath of office to uphold the laws of the state of Arizona by voting against district policy JJIA, written to comply with the Arizona revised statutes. Whereas Paul Bixler attends events of all of the elementary schools and interacts with children of the Liberty School District 25, at which Paul Bixler could have the opportunity to have conversations with the children. Whereas Paul Bixler believes that the conversations are good for the children, as stated in his address to the House Education Committee held on January 22nd, January 2022. Whereas we, the elected precinct committeemen and women of state committee, women of and parents, have been battling this LGBTQ trans grooming in our children's schools for the last 2 years. Whereas LD 23 recognizes the importance and rights of the children, protecting parental rights. Now, therefore, be it resolved that LD 23 and elected precinct committee men and committee women and state committee men.
Thank you, Mr. Bretner. Eloise Flagg.
Hello, board. My name is Eloise Flagg. And I fully support the ECRC and the LD23 and this resolution, and will not support any financial support until this issue is resolved by a Bixler resignation and until the leadership of this board is changed and is transparent and honest with the parents.
John Kane.
Hello, Board. My name is John Kane. I'm a member of LD23 and the ECRC, and I'm here to support this resolution, but it's not the only issue. But it is one of the worst. Grooming has become a major problem in our schools, but lawlessness is also rampant. Paul Bixler broke the oath of office when saying no to support SB 1165, which is law, and district policy JJIA. We have violations from the AG office on open meeting laws, which I have personally been involved with, and hidden contract negotiations with Superintendent Lori Shue. I am done supporting any bonds or overrides for all of these reasons. Thank you.
Leah Colatrea.
Hello, Board. My name is Leah Colatrella, and I am here to support this resolution as well. I'm a mother of a lesbian daughter, but I'm also against the grooming of our children in the schools. It's become a major problem, but again, as John said, it's not the only problem, but in my opinion, is one of the worst. And Paul Bixler did break his oath of office when he was saying no to support of the SB 1165 in the district JJIA. Thank you.
Heather Sim.
Thank you, Governing Board. My name is Heather Finn. I am here in support of our children's safety and protection against the grooming and the trans ideology. This is why I fully support the resolution and will continue to say no to any bonds and overrides until Paul resigns. Our children and community deserve a board that is truthful and transparent, and that isn't what I've witnessed this past year.
I apologize about the last name, ma'am. Bill Thomas.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start by making a couple things clear. I am both a strong Christian and a strong conservative. As a Christian, I believe in what Matthew 7:1 teaches us. Judge not, that ye not be judged. I may not agree with Mr. Bixler's lifestyle, but it's not my position to judge. As a constitutional conservative, I believe every person has the constitutional right to express one's beliefs. I just ask Mr. Bixler keeps his personal life out of official business. I'd now like to introduce myself. My name is Bill Thomas, and I am a precinct committeeman in LD23 for the Republican Party. For the record, I am against any sex education or discussion with young children. The science has proven that introducing sexual content to young children has had devastating psychological effects as they grow into their teens and young adults. I won't go into sources. They are readily available to research. You're well-educated individuals with the ability to do your own research. Liberty 25 will start the new year under new board leadership. If the budget override passes as it's looking it will, there will be no excuses if test scores don't start to rise. This can only happen by changing our curriculum back to direct instruction models and placing the social engineering part of the current curriculum on the back burner. With all this being said, it is time for LD23 to abandon their efforts to push Paul Bixler out of office, as his only offense was to vote against a state statute he believed to be wrong. Don't get me wrong, I do not agree with Paul's position. I'm just agreeing with his First Amendment rights to his beliefs and free speech. LD's 23 resolution was voted on by 13 people. Only half of precinct committeemen were present to vote, but it was a legal quorum. Not all PCs voted to accept his resolution, I being one of them. It is public record as to who did vote for it. It is time to end this discussion and move forward with new tools to turn our education system around. Arizona was just listed by Forbes to be number 47 in public education. We cannot blame this on Paul Bixler. If Liberty 25 is listed 31st in the state, that puts Liberty 25 as one of the worst school districts in the nation, statistically wise. We have a moral obligation to give our youth the tools necessary to be successful and competitive on the world stage. And since the USA ranks 23rd among industrialized nations, that puts us at great disadvantage. Let us end this distraction with Paul Bixler and get to work. Paul can answer to voters in 2024. As community leaders and parents, we must turn our focus on making sure our kids are getting the education and resources they so desperately need. Thank you.
Susan Cheatham.
Good evening, board. My name is Susan Cheatham, and I am a precinct committee woman right here in the Liberty School District. And I am here to support the resolution and to uphold the rights of children and their parents and protect them from trans grooming. Mr. Bixler has openly chose to be a transgender. That's his choice. And he has told the Arizona State House of Education Committee that he supports to talking with children about transgenderism and gender issues without parents' knowledge, and as a parent, that absolutely goes against my rights, and it makes me very angry. He has also stated that the bill SB 1165 that Governor Doug Ducey passed, which states that in the state of Arizona, school sports teams for girls will only have girls and the same for boys. He called that unconstitutional. This would include locker rooms and bathrooms, and I want to address that issue. I personally do not want a strange man in my bathroom, in the public, or at home. That is a very vulnerable place. And how much more? A little girl. A little girl. Not to mention, this opens the door wide for sex offenders to prey upon both little girls and women. And there's been over 20 articles supporting this. This is a sexual danger to females of all ages. Bathrooms and locker rooms need to match the God-given genders they were born with. Now, I support this resolution until Paul Bixler resigns. I will continue to vote no on all bonds and overrides. And I want to leave you with this headline. In July of 2022, this headline, transgender woman who impregnated 2 inmates was removed from a New Jersey female prison. A transgender inmate who impregnated 2 women while incarcerated at Edna Mahand Correctional Facility for Women has been moved. Thank you. Let that sink in.
Michelle,
Hello, board. My name is Michelle Altair, and I'm here in support of the resolution that was read. And I have a different, unique perspective on things, because I traveled with a superintendent during the primaries all over the state who was addressing the transgender issues, the sexualization of children. And we happened to talk with, or after such a talk, an 11-year-old girl came out. And she was just asking about, are you against this? I mean, isn't it, shouldn't we be more accepting with these? Shouldn't we be more accepting? And as the questions were being asked, she shared with us that she played on the girls' volleyball team, 11 years old, played on the girls' volleyball team. And she knew it was a man. It wasn't just because you're in a dress or you're wearing certain clothes does not make you a female. She knew that one of their student coaches was a man, and he would come into their locker room and he would just stand there at the door staring at them. And she was asked, just at you? No, he just stares at us, all of us girls, as we're changing. And the issue, yes, that's a horrible thing, but the bigger thing was she felt bad because she's being indoctrinating that this is natural, this is normal. And so she felt bad, something's wrong with her, because she was uncomfortable as he's watching her. And I don't know, I have never had an 11-year-old girl, but I would imagine they don't even want their fathers in the rooms with them when they're changing, let alone some strange individual who says I identify as a woman in the locker room. So I would think, that we're all going to have to answer to a much higher power for our role in the destruction, and it is the destruction of children. We all had our issues growing up. We all maybe had some idiosyncrasies, some things, problems that we had growing up, but I don't think we were ever told that the reason why you have these problems is because you're really a girl or you're really a boy. Basically telling them that God, the God of the universe, he made a mistake when creating you. And man, fallible man, we know what's right, and we can change you into what you really should be. So I think, we all need to take a deep look within ourselves and know that you will stand before a higher power, and you will be asked about your role in what is the destruction of children in this generation. Thank you.
Lindsey Graham.
Hello, my name is Lindsey Graham, and I am a cat. Meow, meow. I'm not a woman dressed as a cat. I am a cat. By show of hands, I'm curious, how many of you believe and confess that I'm a cat? Great. By show of hands, I'm curious, how many of you believe that your child or a child from this school would believe that I'm actually a cat? No one. You are right. Why? Because you are not stupid, and these children are not stupid. Truth prevails over imagination. Reality exists. Discernment is innate and something we are biologically wired to have. One look at me and you know this to be true. I am a woman posing as a cat. You may also think correctly that if I truly believe I'm a cat, I have a mental disorder. If I suffer from a mental disorder, and if I am unable to discern reality, am I safe to be around children? Would you put me in charge of making critical decisions about the safety and well-being of children and about the direction of their education when I cannot even discern truth from fiction? Confession. I'm not actually a cat, guys, just because I say I am. You've not agreed to or committed to addressing me as a cat simply because I demand it. No tail, whiskers, or outfit makes me a cat, just like no lipstick, high heels, or long hair makes him a man, a woman. It is just as biologically impossible for me to become a cat as it is for a man to be a woman. And you have one job as members of this school board, and it's defined as this. School board members are responsible for broad, forward-thinking, minute analysis and decisive action in all areas that affect students and staff in their schools. I ask you, do you believe that the actions of a grown man playing dress-up as a woman affects the students and staff positively or negatively? A public school is not the place for social experiments in altered realities or gender ideologies. It is not the place to celebrate a grown man with a mental illness, dressing as a woman, and teaching kids lies. Children come to school to learn facts and truths about reality, including unchanging biological truths about science and nature, not to learn that they can change biological realities and become anything they want in the name of diversity. What you're actually doing is worse than just lying to our kids. You're forcing them to be participants in your lie, in your charade. You're forcing them to deny what they see with their eyes, and you're forcing them to speak lies. I ask you again, am I a cat? And if you say no, then the mindset must be aligned with your discernment across the board. By allowing a falsity to be displayed and paraded around the school, you teach children that truth is not existent, facts are not real, and biology is a lie. You fail at your job, your only job, by confusing children and teaching them untruths and to coddle a grown man playing dress up as a woman. If you were to address me as a cat right now, it's as ridiculous as when you say Miss Bixler and a grown man's voice comes thundering over the...
Thank you. Elwood Kunstler.
Superintendent Chuff, President Mark McGuire, board members, present and online. I'm going to finish reading the last sentence of the resolution. All parents demand that Liberty 25 School Board member Paul Bixler resign immediately. Be it further resolved that Legislative District 23, along with all the above mentioned elected precinct committeemen and women, state committeemen and women, grandparents, taxpayers, and friends will not support any financial bonds or overrides for this district until these issues are cleaned up. My name is Butch Kunstler. Elwood Kunstler is my official name. You all know me. I've been here before. I am a precinct committeeman with Legislative District 23. I am the first vice chair of Legislative District 23. And I am the chair of the Estrella Conservative Republican Club. I have been fighting this battle in favor of children for 2 years, and it just needs to stop. It's ridiculous. We are asking again Paul Bixler to resign, as we did many times after his testimony at the state education hearing. But now, Liberty 25 School Board member Paul Bixler violated his oath of office. That is way more serious than what you thought testifying in front of the state committee was, okay? SB 1165, JJIA, revised statutes for the schools, is not unconstitutional. It's realistic and it makes sense. Paul wanted to support that any girl can play on any boy's team, any boy can play on any girl's team, therefore referring to the same locker rooms, the same showers, and the same bathrooms. Now, he did not actually say that, but that's where it leads, okay? LGBTQ community has been up in arms about transgenders. It is a lie that they support transgenders of any type or any matter. It's just an outright lie. They've been kicked off of Facebook, TikTok, and other social media platforms because they came out against it. So it's not a gay issue either. The precinct committeeman vote for LD 23 was 16-2. That's the verified vote on tape. There are 37 precinct committeemen, committeewomen in LD 23. So that'll give you the average. There was 18 on board with the vote, and the vote was 16 to support this resolution and 2 against. Please do the right thing, Paul Bixler, and resign.
Thank you. Jerry Spencer.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I have an experience I'd like to share with you that was very tough for me. I was a poll observer during the primary election, and I was stationed at the City Hall in Buckeye. And I was there, my shift was about 6 hours. And I was there, and I just observed, the poll workers and what was going on at the polling place. And so when my shift was up, I went to the bathroom. And so I finished, and I'm washing my hands, and in walks Paul Bixler. And I'm 72, but I don't care how old I was. I mean, I'd been taken to the bathroom. My mother, my mother used to take me when I was very small. And I had an expectation of security, safety. And at that moment, it was completely broken because this man walked into the bathroom. And I was so shocked that there was no warning, there was no escort. Hey, is anybody in here? There was no accommodation for me as a woman with my expectation of privacy and security. And I was so shaken that I got out of there as fast as I could. I didn't even report the incident to the troubleshooter who was not there at the time. But the next day I did, because I was a poll observer at another location. And I spoke to the troubleshooter about it, and she said, you know, that really bothers me too. And I'm glad that I have a hotline number that I reported the incident in. Because when you vote, the experience is supposed to be welcoming, it's supposed to be secure, and this incident just reminded me about, hey, it isn't welcoming and it isn't secure, and I'm here doing my civic duty, voting, and this shouldn't be happening. This person, Mr. Paul Bixler, should have enough judgment, enough sensitivity to know when it's appropriate to use a woman's bathroom. And in my mind, it's never appropriate, and I'm not being judgmental. I'm just saying this.
Thank you very much for your words. Ms. Zimmerman.
I have two very important things to discuss tonight, and each deserve equal attention and time. And I will try to do them both justice in 3 minutes. And Mr. Jensen, I didn't take his advice and ask someone to read my second statement for me. I thought they should come from me. So, as many of you know, I have served as the PAC chair for the Yes for Liberty schools for the past 7 months. I really was going to try to do this. And I am extremely proud to stand here tonight and say that the override is going to win. And we are currently up by 389 votes after the last drop moments ago. I just want to give everyone an idea that at the end of election night, we were only up by 80 votes, and progressively each night we increase our lead. I'm excited for the district to be able to have the funding to truly make a difference in students' lives. But more than anything, I'm excited for students who will continue to receive a well-rounded education with art, music, and PE. They will get to have lower class sizes, which research shows has a good correlation with student achievement as well as teacher morale. There are many people that were an integral part in helping getting the override passed, and I want to thank the leadership team who met weekly, every single person who knocked on a door, put a sign in their yard, donated to the campaign, encouraged other people to get involved. We could not have done it without your help. But most importantly, thank you to every single person who voted yes. Your decision will make a difference in the lives of 4,000 students, and I personally am forever grateful. The second thing I want to talk tonight about is the 4-day week. I have sent the board several emails over the past 3 days about many different aspects that will impact the district by moving to a 4-day week. But when it comes to the bottom line, it is not in the best interest of children to decrease the amount of learning they are receiving. All research states that the best opportunity for student achievement is to increase instructional minutes, and we are doing the opposite of that by moving to a 4-day week. I think this sets a bad precedent and the perception that the district is providing students with less, not more. I think we can all agree that public perception is important, especially when going out for overrides and bonds, which are absolutely necessary in this state as our state government continues to underfund public education. I can understand that the board is looking at this decision from many different angles. However, the guiding factor should always be student learning. And I believe that if you are really honest with yourself, There is nothing to be gained for students by going to a 4-day week. I think your decision puts our vulnerable student population, students on IEP and at our Title I schools at even greater risk. And why would you do that to students where school is already a challenge for them? Please make the right decision, not the most popular one.
Thank you, Ms. Zimmerman. Any board members have anything they'd like to say? Mr. Parks?
No comment.
Mr. Todd?
Uh-oh. He left the building.
Ms. Bixler?
I have nothing to add.
Mr. Todd, do you have anything to say after public comment?
Thank you, sir.
Item 5, does anyone have anything on the consent agenda they'd like to have pulled? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Brian?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Michael? I am also an aye. Show that it approved. 3 votes. 1, he's having all kinds of technical difficulties, so I'm not sure how you want to cast that. Item 6.1, discussion on maintenance and operations override election results, campaign impact on maintenance and operations budget planning. Dr. Schuff.
President Aguirre, members of the governing board, I would like to echo Kelly Zimmerman's comments about the extensive effort and interest and commitment that our staff, the PAC leadership team meeting participants, our administrators, parents, teachers, all the way across the board. This election is largely due to people having an understanding of what this override funds, and it funds programs for children. The fact that there are campaign out there against the election based on other factors, I can appreciate those other factors, but this was about our children and the learning experiences they have, the size of their classrooms, class size ratios, all things that directly impact their learning experiences. Mrs. Zimmerman, as long as I've been in education, I have never seen the leadership, the commitment, the dedication that Kelly Zimmerman has offered to our district. She has pushed, pulled, coerced, done the work herself when nobody else would. She has just been an incredible force. There's no words. There are no words to thank you on behalf of our children. And also our teachers. You know, our teachers have looked at, they've been completely stressed by what the implications of this election means for them. Whether it is teachers, 29 teaching positions that may have had to be cut as a result of this, whether it is our teachers who have already at a lower preparation time this year and at risk we're having, what would happen? Does that just go away? We didn't have solutions or answers to that. The class sizes were raised significantly this year. That only comes with more stress on our teachers and more impact on our children and the attention they receive from their teachers. So this was an incredible, incredible thing that passed on behalf of our kids. And I'm just thankful for everyone, every one of you sitting out here and out in the audience. I'm very, very grateful.
Mr. Parks?
Well, it sure makes our job easier. Thank you very much. So it's going to be interesting to see moving forward, and I look forward to getting our class sizes back down to where they should be, and getting the support for the teachers moving forward. So thanks again.
Ms. Bixler?
I also want to thank Kelly Zimmerman for all the hard work she did. I also, over the last couple of years, had the opportunity to see all the effort that Kelly Zimmerman has put into this and the dedication she has made to the students of the Liberty Elementary School District. Kelly Zimmerman, thank you so very much. I really, really appreciate what you did.
Mr. Todd?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me better now?
Yep.
Great. I apologize. I'm at a meeting with the Navajo Nation, and it's a little rugged on internet connection, so I've finally been able to get a cell phone signal that works. I too would like to thank Ms. Zimmerman for all of her work, as well as everybody else who has stood up for children, who are looking out for them. It's a very touching moment to see the communities come together and fight for the children, and I certainly appreciate that.
So I also would like to thank Mrs. Zimmerman. And not most importantly, but just as importantly, Mr. Zimmerman. I don't think that a lot of people know that Mr. Zimmerman came to my house, picked up some signs, picked up a T-post driver, and that man put up 75 signs by himself. Also want to thank Mrs. Basinger. Her and her son also took some signs, and they put up signs in Rainbow Valley area and the surrounding areas. To the principals,
Absolutely.
thank you for coming to the meetings, as I or my wife was at every single one. And this is what happened, is the product of what happens when folks get involved. And you march to the same drum, and you know that it's only about children. Children. They're innocent. It's not their fault that adults can't agree on issues. It's all about children. And there is, right now, there's 7,681 adults who said, it's all about children. I'm willing to forego a cup of coffee a week in order to pass this override so that children can have a better experience at education. And I too agree with you, Dr. Schuff, that I can, for the life of me, cannot understand how anyone can look a child in the eye and say, I am campaigning against you because I do not like people who are on the board, or I do not like people who are in the administration. And I wonder what that child would say. Wouldn't know what to say, because a child only knows love and kindness and understanding. And it's adults who teach them everything else. Ms. Basinger, what you've done, we haven't been able to do. And you did it. Right? It was you. It was your drive of that we're not going to lose this one. And you're right. It came out and it was 80 votes ahead. And guess what? Every single drop it gained, because I was watching just like everyone else. And while they have not called it yet, it's there. Students won, teachers won, administration won. Public education within Liberty Elementary School District, they won. And I'm here to say that if we come together and we stay together and we let go of our differences, there's a tremendous amount of things that we as a community within this school district can accomplish. And truly, it really comes down to adults. Because the kids, they're ready to work. Administration, they're ready to work. Teachers, support staff, they're darn sure ready to work. So with that, on behalf of me and my family, thank you.
President Aguirre, I had one other thing to add. I think that our staff and our parents may be wondering some next steps for the district. This time of year is when the budget committee starts up, so to the point that was made that it makes the job easier as we go forward, it certainly does. And some of those things where we look at how do we add back pieces or aspects, the budget committee will work through those, look at the costs surrounding of those, how now that we've got the additional budget that restored back into the budget, and we aren't looking additional cuts. That work will be happening here in December with the committee coming up with some those things. So the community is welcome to attend the budget committee meetings, and our staff can be involved in that as well. So just know that that will be coming back to our governing board with what are the next steps to restore.
Is there any other discussion on this item?
Mr. President, can I make a motion for a 5-minute recess, please? We got a lot ahead of us.
So there's a motion for a 5-minute recess. Is there a second?
I can second that.
Okay. So we'll take a recess at, so we recessed at 7:18. When we come back, we'll be on to item 6.2.
Thank you.
Show that we came back into session at 7:23. We are on to item 6.2, discussion on school morale. And with that, I'll just open it up to the board for discussion. Ms. Bixler?
Yes, I did have a couple of questions I was hoping to ask on the morale. When we look at the non-certified staff environmental survey, it appears that 62% of the responders had 1 to 3 years of experience. I'm not sure why that would be. Is that because we have, is that as far as experiential, is that the age of our staff? Are they really, as far as non-certified, had that less than 3 years of experience?
Mr. Nettle, do you understand the question about the overall demographics of our teaching staff? So what you saw there was the people who responded to the survey. That's the percentage. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the percentage of people in our teaching staff that only have 1 to 3 years of experience.
Yeah, I mean, I will add to that specifically to say that over the last 3 to 5 years, we have gotten a little bit younger and more inexperienced as a teaching staff. There's a lot of factors that I think everybody's well aware of those factors, of what contributes to that level of experience. But yeah, generally speaking, we are getting a little bit more inexperienced across the board from a teaching staff perspective.
All right, yeah, that was the way it appeared as far as the information that was presented. I do understand there was a difference between the number of people possibly that could answer and the number of people that did. So I do understand that. It just seemed kind of interesting that we had that kind of demographic breakdown, that we had that kind of 62% being responding. So my second question involves slide number 5. Is it possible to pull that up so you can see a little better what I'm talking about?
I will do so.
Yeah, if I'm reading this correctly, it looks like 76% of the responders responded as far as satisfaction. They're somewhat high or very high. That seems like a very positive number to me. Am I interpreting that correctly?
I'm on slide 5. It's around teacher credentials.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must be. This was the I jumped presentation. This is the non-certified staff work environment survey. I'm sorry.
Okay. So repeat your question again.
Slide number 5 presents 76% responded satisfactory, somewhat high or very high. Am I reading that correctly?
I mean, I'm afraid I'm not sure which one you're on, so I'm just looking to see if I can catch up with you.
Yeah, in my notes, I have it written down as slide 5.
Staff all morale.
Thank you, Mr. Garrison. All right, so for that question 4, that's, you know what, the one you pulled up is non-certified. So
That's what he's looking at.
you are looking, okay, so it's support staff and administrators. Is that what you mean?
Correct.
Okay. And your question is whether it's high or very high, and you added?
Yeah, it appears to me that the number of satisfactory responders was 76%.
Yes.
Which to me seems like a pretty high number.
It is certainly more positive than negative.
Yeah, and I was just wondering if I was interpreting that correctly, that yes, that is true, that 76% of the responders did respond either somewhat or very satisfied.
Yes, and also in response to your first comment, I attended a conference on essentially, retention and induction of teachers. And Dr. Ingersoll was a researcher that I had studied for a number of years, and referred to the aspect of kind of that younger population or younger workforce is the greening of the teaching profession, in that the percentage of graduates coming out of the College of Education eligible to be teachers is declined significantly, and therefore also the number of people coming into the profession has declined, and they've become increasingly younger and increasingly less qualified or certified. So that holds true. I just thought the concept of the greening of education, I thought was interesting.
And just so I understand what you just said, that growing younger in age of our support staff is largely in part due to not only people not entering, but also the more experienced staff leaving and not being replaced.
Correct. My comment was related to the teaching staff, but we also are seeing equal concerns with support staff. Whether we can secure them to take a position. For example, our warehouse supervisor left the position, and then when we went to hire and offer the position, it wasn't enough salary compensation to attract them to accept the position. So while we see a lot of issues with our teaching staff, it also transfers as well to our support staff.
Okay, thank you. And just one comment, as I went through the slides and researched the information, it appeared to me that on slide 45, again, in the, slide 38, in the non-certified, the support staff survey, that it looks to me, at least what I can read, it looks very, very positive. Things are moving in a very positive direction, at least what slide 38 has to say. And I just wanted to comment on that.
Mr. Todd?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you able to still hear me better?
Yes.
Great. As I look at this, I'm not really sure which slide to go to first or last. Overall, it appears that we have a morale issue. Now, certainly that's systematic, probably across the country with education right now. But to be perfectly honest, I don't care so much about across the nation. I care about Liberty and the school district that we represent. I think it behooves us to not only look at this plan or these surveys, but then ask for a true plan of what are we going to do to improve the morale. I'm looking at slides and I see 24.71 say they're somewhat high in their job satisfaction morale, and only 8.82% say they're high. Very low at 17 and low at 17, somewhat low at 30. But that's all below the line for me. And the only way, as we continue to talk about teacher retention, which we've made a huge issue this year, is to change this. This has spiraled out of control in our district, and I believe it's cultural from some changes that were made. So it's not the principals. I've heard the principals have been told, go do stuff to fix morale. It's long past that. The principals are not the scapegoat in this, and they should not be the ones that are handling this. Later on tonight, I'm going to ask that we agendize a topic to talk about what we're doing for our teachers and our staff. Please understand when I say teachers, I mean everybody, our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our bus drivers. And I think we need to raise the bar on what we are doing as a district. I have seen very few awards sent out from the district office. I'm on social media and I see other districts
recognizing teachers almost weekly. We're not seeing that, not hearing that. And I think this board must take action now or after the first of the year to instill a level of support for our teachers, to make morale a top priority. With that comes a bar of expectation that they're going to have to perform and continue to do good by our students and improve. But this isn't a principal issue. This is not a leadership at a campus level. This is a district-wide problem, and it shouldn't happen. We're only as good as we are in our darkest hours, and our darkest hour right now is not looking very good. So to the teachers, to the staff, to the bus drivers, custodians, I would tell you to give us a chance. In the past, it was said by somebody that they didn't really care why teachers were leaving. Now, make no mistake, I never felt that way. I've been asking for these kind of surveys for a long time, and we now see the writing is on the wall, and this has to change. And to simply take this and say, well, what questions do you have as a board? Personally, I think it's irresponsible from our leadership team. I think when it's this bad, they should have come forward with a plan that says, this is horrible, and this is what we're doing to fix it. And if they have to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in order to turn this around and make this right for our teachers, which in turn benefits our students, then that's what needs to happen. So for me, the bar has jumped on board of SpaceX, and it's somewhere way out in the atmosphere, and that's how high this bar needs to be raised in the future. Make sure that our teachers and our students know that we are dead serious about keeping morale high, which will turn around our student grades, will increase the performance levels that we have, and make things right. So I can tell you that changes are coming, and people can either jump on or jump off, but we need to ask teachers to give us a chance, and administration needs to fully come up with a plan that's going to fix this. And I'm quite certain that I would, at this point, recommend that we cut back some professional development in the district to give some teachers a little bit of time to do their own professional development, which might not be data-driven, but it might be driven for their mental sake, and give them some time to improve and come back after the first of the year ready to raise the bar. Thank you.
Mr. Parks?
Well, I went through all three of the PDFs and dug through them quite a bit. I think some of the most valuable information was in the, call it Q&A, some of the, the questions and answers, and there were a lot of them. I started writing down kind of some ideas that go along and some consistency as far as what I focused more on the teachers, what they were saying, and it seemed there was a theme here. It's overworked, underappreciated, and student behavior. So I think those are kind of our targets. I've been thinking about this I've been here a year, and I've seen this as a problem since the day I sat behind us, sat on this dais, and I've been pushing, quite a few things that have to do with student behavior, and it looks like it's kind of creeped up on us. We're going to have to take some issue with some of this stuff, and we've talked about teacher pay. I've said this to Dr. Schaff, and I've expressed that, unfortunately, teachers haven't been paid well forever. Something else has changed. It's been my experience in the business world, when you have people showing up for their paycheck, those aren't your best employees. And we need to really start thinking about the culture in the school district and figuring out how, as a group and a team, how we can make it better. And I think we have the people to do it. So I support what Mr. Todd was saying. I think we have to sit down and come up with a plan of attack and hit it. And with everybody's help, we'll make it happen.
So when I look at morale, there's some things that we can't change. Some things that our hands are tied on as a school district. It's the law. There's just some things that you can't do. If there's a child who acts up, does that mean that child's no good? Just give up on them, right? I'm not saying that you let them off scot-free, but do you just give up on that baby? This is a compounding issue that we have, and we bring it into the morale. We have teachers who have just gotten into the teaching profession. They're new at their job. They haven't adapted all the way yet. They're not seasoned professionals that they've seen all the different aspects of their career. So of course they're going to feel that is this what it's all about, as far as not feeling supported. The one thing that I look to, and this is something that I've always done, is everything starts and stops with the board. I think morale within the district starts with the board. I think that things that the board says out in public gets back to staff, and then that just trickles on down. I think when board makes disparaging comments within a board meeting, that's all part of morale. I talked about it a little bit before. At some point, folks got to think about what's best for the district and not best for themselves individually. I think once the board quits picking at what's wrong with this school district and truly focuses on the beautiful things that this district does and has done. For goodness sakes, when I came on the board, you weren't going to get a survey like this, not this much participation. You weren't going to get teachers who were able to send disparaging emails to the governing board because of fear of reprisal. Guess what? That happens today. This governing board gets those emails from staff and from teacher because they know that there is integrity at the administration level and that it's okay to express your opinions. Because negative opinions are towards the board, make the board better. What doesn't make the board better is pushing a political agenda. That's bad morale. When I hear that either now or we wait until January, I take that as a threat, and shame on you. This is about children, and this is about families whose parents educate our children so that those parents can make money to feed their children.
Mr. Guire, may I make a couple other comments on this?
Yes, please.
We went about this for an important reason, because we saw from our spring survey results a drop in overall job satisfaction or positive feelings about the district. So we approached it, try to do it in a personal way to start with, in two ways: meeting with support staff at every school and with certified teachers at every school, and asking them directly, what do you need or want in terms of support, guidance, and resources? What does that look like? What is that? And that was helpful for the principals to hear, but it was also helpful for us as a district to hear collectively when we hear it bubble up from all of the schools. So while we did absolutely get our principals involved, you can see in the survey results the positive support that they feel from their administrators, and it makes a significant difference. We also asked the principals to interview, not all, but a handful at every campus of teachers whom they would perceive as being irreplaceable, so they could learn what are they doing that contributes to them staying, not waiting until somebody is unhappy and makes a different decision to leave, like the exit interviews, which we already have in place. So this provided some valuable information from those people as well. And after that, less personal, but an opportunity to be perhaps anonymous in this way is asking every employee what it is they think about these important topics or aspects of job satisfaction and morale. And it is, you can hear the voice of people come out in the comments. You can hear, I can hear the struggle that they have. And so I just would want our employees to know that we ask these hard questions. We're not afraid to ask the hard questions, and we want to know what it is we can do to make things better. Like Mr. Parks, we try to summarize at a high level and also at a more of a micro level, but at a high level, what are the big themes that come across in all three ways that we were asking people, what do they think, what do they need? And over again, we heard compensation from both support staff and from teachers. That's an important piece. The administration recommended to the governing board, and the governing board 100% rallied behind the additional $1.8 million that we have from the state. How do we utilize that to put directly to staff and teacher compensation? We needed to wait till after the override to make that happen, and perhaps some consideration also for how do we handle that with the aggregate expenditure limit. But it is limited by the amount of funds we have to work with in the state of Arizona. So that's an important piece. Compensation didn't used to be a top priority for why people stay in the teaching profession. That has now changed. In the last 2 years, the research points to compensation is critical for that. Our staff are overworked. That includes both our teaching staff and our support staff. The support staff survey, you can hear the comments come through that they have sometimes the same number of people in that department that they had 5 years ago, when we've increased 25% enrollment since then, but we've kept our administrative costs low. You hear it with our teaching staff when they have over high class sizes, or we don't have enough special education staff, so they're taking over caseloads. That creates additional work that impacts their work-life balance. One of the steps we took to try to compensate them for additional money, but it doesn't support them with additional time or the work-life balance. It's still a frustration. It's still a point of exhaustion for our employees. Hopefully, if there's an opportunity to pay our people more and be able to attract more people to the profession, we won't have as many vacancies. That will be a support to our overworked staff. Curriculum being complete. A lot of heavy lifting was done on that, I would say primarily prior to the pandemic. And since then, our teachers have really just said, I can do this much and no more. And we respect that. The issue then comes with the opportunity for them to have a resource that they desperately need. And if they aren't able to support the development of that, the experts in those areas and for those grade levels, perhaps the solution is, it's an expensive solution, but maybe this is an opportunity where we use some one-time funds to be able to pay for the development, have contract out for that work if our teachers are not willing to do that for additional pay. The grant we accessed is allowing us to pay our teachers $30 an hour, far more than they typically do, but they still are not willing to do that extra work. And we don't blame them for that. They've got a heavy, heavy load. Another issue that surfaced was the student behaviors. There are a number of things that we have put in place to start the school year with, but I don't think our teachers are seeing the impact of those things yet. So an example of that would be the behavior specialists that were authorized this last board meeting. And we have, we're beginning to look for those candidates, but that means our teaching staff are not feeling the benefits of those things yet. So those are big things. A lot of them do come around the areas of money. So the only other thing that we have control over is time. And so what can we do to flexibly respond? And that we can flexibly respond. And I think our administrators have made some adjustments already this year. They may continue to make more. Examples of that, of how we use our early release time. We've got special education teachers that have a very, very high caseload. Principals have excused them from some of the collaborative work or their school projects or their professional development so that they can go write those IEPs, do those evaluations, and be prepared to meet their requirements to deliver those IEP meetings. Another example is principals, instead of some professional learning time and their collaborative team time, they have swapped those out so that their staff, their teachers, can then prioritize what it is they need to do during that time collaboratively. Because today, how we used to teach, when each teacher went to their own classroom and did their own work, I'm sorry, but that's not as efficient as when we have some collaboration where perhaps one teacher is preparing for English language arts, a different teacher is preparing for mathematics, and we're sharing those professional learning, professional lesson plans, or how we assess teachers. To Mr. Aguirre's point, we've got a number of new teachers that requires a team to come along so that we can make sure that we are meeting student needs. All that's to say, there is tremendous pressure that we push internally and externally on academic learning for our kids. And that, frankly, is why we exist. We are a learning education institution. That is our mission, to educate children. We cannot abdicate from that. Our children deserve to gain back what was lost during the pandemic, and all children deserve to learn. So I would say teaching and our principals, it's a very, very difficult job. It is a challenging job, and it comes with a high level of expectation. But yes, we hear our employees, and we will continue to put things in place and bring things to the governing board that can provide relief, can provide recognition, and can provide compensation and time for what they need to do their jobs as well as they can.
One other thing I'd like to say is this is public education. More importantly, there are federal laws in place that protect employees from threats, from intimidation, and that this district, being an employer within the United States of America, those labor laws have to and shall be followed. I don't think that it helps morale when we have administrators, their jobs being threatened.
President Aguirre, may I make one comment?
Yes, Ms. Bixler.
Yes, I agree with a lot of that's been said, and Dr. Suff, you're right. Compensation has become a much greater impact on our especially our teaching staff, and not to say that the support staff don't also feel the impact, but definitely within the survey information that we received, certainly compensation has come to a higher point than I've ever seen it in my experience. But I also want to point out a couple other things. 70% of the teaching staff surveyed that responded indicated a real disparity and a dissatisfaction with their life-work balance. that is something we have to really look at. The other thing that I think we need to keep very much in mind is that 65% of the responders on the teaching staff are really, and this is anecdotally, really responded positively to what they see as a team that they're a part of. And I agree, the culture within the schools and within the district, I think we need to utilize that team aspect because I think that makes a big difference.
Is there any other discussion on this topic? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 6.3. Discussion and consideration to change the instructional model from a 5-day school week to a 4-day school week for school year 2024. Dr. Schuff.
President Aguirre, administration is not bringing anything additional beyond what we have discussed in our public hearings, the study session we most recently had. So really, this is a final opportunity for the board to discuss and consider whether to make the change.
Ms. Bixler, any more questions that you had that you haven't already asked in some of the other meetings?
I do have one quick question. Dr. Suff, as far as the 5-day week, for me, instructional time is sacred. I have a real hard time losing instructional time. But I have a question because of the strength of the statement made by the staff in the survey concerning the team aspect. Is there within a 5-school-day week a way to, and I don't mean markedly change the amount of instructional time, but is there a way to find additional time for collaboration and planning for our teachers and for extending the CHAMPS experience for our students, for increasing the amount of time?
Okay, so I think I heard two parts to the question. During the 5-day week, we did extend the amount of early release time that does increase the collaboration time. We have asked to hold sacred, at least 40 minutes of that time for their team time. So is it possible to reduce the remaining 2 hours, or to say across the board have it be longer than 40 minutes of team time? Absolutely. And I think some principals flexibly do that already. The second part of your question, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm already forgetting it. What's
CHAMPS.
CHAMPS. All right, so this year, and it was a budgetary decision to decrease but not, or reduce but not eliminate programs. So we reduced CHAMPS from 40 minutes to 35 minutes. And that was a budget savings of the additional positions we would have had to have added to be able to maintain the 40 minutes. If we were to increase it to as much as 45 minutes this next year with a 4-day school week, or excuse me, 46 minutes with a 4-day school week, just some rough calculations, I see that as costing an additional 2 positions, 2 to 3 positions, depending on how class sizes come in with our growth. So your point about how to increase preparation time for our teachers, that can happen, and depends on how many periods in the school day and the master schedule that is.
Okay, thank you.
And obviously not at cost.
Mr. Todd?
I just have a couple questions. One, I still would like to see some different models for professional development. We've only seen one, and I think that's a very important thing, but there's just been one. I think we should see some other ideas. Secondly, I just want to ensure that we are planning to include in the future contract language the expectations for professional development, to really make sure the teachers understand what it is, but to protect them. I see sometimes this as a slippery slope on a Friday, if they're coming in for professional development, I want to make sure that this doesn't get slippery and a 6-hour day doesn't turn into a 7-hour day, 6.5-hour day. They're going to be working, if we go to a 4-day model, they're going to be working longer days, which is fatiguing. If you go from a typical 8-hour day to a 12-hour day, some of us have done that. It certainly changes a little bit. If you run 3 in a row, 3 12-hour days might feel longer than 5 8-hour days. So I just want to make sure that we're doing this, much like in our contracts, we talk about their, they'll have a minimum of 1 evaluation a year. I just want to lock that in, but most of all, I really want to see some other models for professional development and see how, if we're going to a 4-day, how maybe we can free up another Friday for the teachers, but maintain professional development. I'm a big believer in it. I do think we need to do it. I just don't want this to get out of control. And part of the biggest reason I think we're doing this, if we do it, is for retention and recruitment. And if we start that way, but we add to it with too much PD because it starts late, there's a technical issue, whatever the case may be, and now block of time extends 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, that changes things. So those are my 2 concerns that I would like to have some solid answers about.
So as far as we haven't yet done the work on how to change our contract language, we are looking at what we're calling work days or non-work days for Fridays, and that may be a way of kind of defining that so teachers can be much clear and have confidence that those are non-work days. So that clears up that aspect of it. And the contracts, yes, was we work through with our attorney how to develop those and what constitutes the work day, et cetera. That is work yet to do, but there is the commitment to be clear about that. And then the second aspect is kind of the work day isn't necessarily always professional learning. There is work that happens in schools. These events that the governing board enjoys, the community events, that takes a great deal of work from staff to pull off a carnival and get everything ready, and or the planning around things. So work day may mean what are the community or the school-wide work that needs to be done. They may need to have an extended time period studying how discipline is working or not working in their school. That's not professional learning, but it is collaborative community time in the school that principals need access to teachers and teachers need access to one another. And if we can work it out right with the schedule, it would be a beautiful thing if teachers also had access to time with the support staff that work directly with them, for example, the paraprofessionals. That becomes a budget issue. So it's, I think the emphasis felt out in our meetings that it was the emphasis on professional learning, because one of the things we were trying to safeguard was to make sure professional learning wasn't lost. When we modeled it, certainly going to 2 times instead of 4 times. You can imagine now the frequency and consistency of which teachers convening together to work on things, for their classrooms and for their grade level or for their content area, they have less consistency or less frequent time. And the overall amount of time is reduced from when it is in a 5-day schedule. So looking at it, I think we all can agree we can reduce that professional learning time and still have a good go of it. Every school district that I spoke to that implemented this, the number one thing they said they would change and they regretted because now they can't come back from it and it's causing some detrimental, negative impact is the lack of community time, the lack of work time together. Because the school day, teachers are isolated in their classrooms, and this isn't isolated work anymore. It's too much work in an isolated way. So that team time is really critical. It's not just professional learning. it's everything else. So I would say, in terms of models, I'm hesitant to say any one particular model. I think it's going to be modeled differently at every school and at different times in the year of how much of that is actually professional learning versus collaboration, team time versus perhaps even on that workday some individual time. I think that there's a lot of decisions. There's a lot of different ways to make that work. And I'm hesitant to actually structure that and say it's going to happen in one way. I've heard some criticism around that we aren't differentiating professional learning. We're differentiating more than any school district I've ever been a part of. But it, again, is limited by the number of people qualified and able to provide that, to differentiate into more smaller, minute, smaller groups, to have it be completely job embedded, to have it be completely supportive of what somebody needs. But we're doing it by grade level, we're doing it by content area, subject area. You know, there's not a lot of other ways to differentiate it even further. And it requires every principal, assistant principal, instructional coach, reading interventionist, all hands on deck to be able to differentiate to the level it is. If you want even greater differentiation, that's going to require more instructional support staff to be able to pull that off, and that comes at a budget cost. So I would say that I would feel strongly to retain the 2 work days, or the work days that are shown on the calendar if you move forward with the 4-day. It can be something that absolutely could be evaluated. It's something that we could reevaluate the following year. But I don't want to replicate mistakes that other districts feel like they've made in implementing the 4-day week.
Mr. Parks, your thoughts?
Just real quick, forgive me, I didn't bring my sheets from last. I thought I did. What was the actual difference on the 7-hour and 40-minute 4-day school week? What was the difference between that and the 5-day? Was it 30 hours a year?
When it, the instructional hours is 5 hours difference.
Okay, all right. I couldn't remember which one was which, but
It was this.
7 hour, 40 minutes, 148 days.
okay, so
with
this
two-
we're talking 5 hours.
Correct. And that's with 1 day for parent-teacher conference in the fall and 1 day in the spring, with the expectation that one of the workday, that Friday workday, is actually a workday for conferences.
Okay, perfect. Really, that's it. I've been going over just about everything kind of in my spare time, kind of going back through this, and this is complicated. This isn't
Very
going to be
much so.
easy. So, thank you.
I only had one request, and I believe it was, I asked it at the work study session, and I asked for a number, the amount of money that it would take for the most needy kids for lunches. And do we have that number?
We know the,
What it would take to make them babies whole. That's the only number I want to know.
my understanding of your question, I don't know that we're able to get to any more knowledge about the neediest of students other than to say, do they qualify for free or reduced lunch? And I know there's a narrower group you'd be looking for.
Yep, I want to know the kids who are eating cheese sandwiches. Okay, those are the ones that I'd like to know, and I want to know what it'll take for someone to buy their lunch or buy food that they can take home with them on Thursday if this goes through. And I'd really appreciate that number.
I can provide you the number of what it would cost us for staffing over the course of the year. So that's part of it, right? To make sure that we had the opportunity to staff that. That additional cost for food services is $8,000 in staffing. The one consideration, I believe that the question was asked at our study session on Thursday, specific to which particular schools could offer that. So in the slide deck that was presented for the study session, there's a summary on some food service questions that were asked. I had reported earlier that 1,748 students qualified for free and reduced lunch. Of those 1,748, 1,567 currently qualify for free. There was an additional question specific to how do we know and can we identify of those 1,567 students, those particular students of that group that have food insecurities at home.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way that we can tell other than to identify the 1,567 students that qualify for free. But whether or not those students have food insecurities, we don't know that number. So to say what the reimbursable component would be over and above the $8,000 expense for labor, specific to the limited number of schools that are qualified under ADE as high risk, the numbers that we are going off of to kind of give a ballpark to it would be our summer meal program. And so we have those particular numbers.
Okay.
Our highest level of participation is at Blue Horizons, in which we averaged over 30 meals per day.
Okay.
At Rainbow Valley and Freedom, the other two schools that we provided, at Rainbow Valley, we averaged 2 families per day over the summer, and at Freedom Elementary, we averaged about 5. So I don't know that gives you a real number of how many meals could be served in those particular schools. The only number I could come up with concretely would be the $8,000 specific to staffing it on Fridays at those high-risk schools over the course of the year.
So and I believe food services that might be able to answer this. The question that I have is not to staff it on Friday, but to send a meal home with that child on Thursday. So I'm not talking about additional staff. I'm talking about an extra meal for that baby on Thursday.
Can you come to the mic, please?
Sorry. Are we referring to the students just that are free reduced meals?
Free.
Just the free students? I would not have an exact number for you, but I can come up with that number.
Because that's what I'd like. I'd like to know what that number is. I'd
And-
like to know that dollar amount that it's going to take to make sure that those kids have a meal.
And so they would go home with a meal on Thursday?
Yes.
A breakfast and a lunch?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we can look into that number.
We have no idea what that number is right now.
I wouldn't.
Mr. Nuttall, can you say the number of students that receive free lunches here in the district?
1,567.
Did you recognize that?
And for that, the dollar amount that we get reimbursed, that we would have to come up with this dollar amount, do you think that is a comparable dollar amount that we charge students currently for their meal, or would it be a smaller package meal, maybe not meeting all the requirements, but it's a smaller package? What is that per unit cost, do you think?
So right now we offer reimbursable meals because we are reimbursed by ADE, but if these meals are going home, we're not going to be reimbursed.
So, so just give a meal price, and then what, an estimate of what that meal price would be since it's not reimbursed, what's the total price that it would probably cost us per meal?
So we currently do offer meals that are not reimbursed to other schools, for example, Sierra schools, and I believe it's $4.50 per meal.
Thank you.
Just for the lunch. Then we would have to add the breakfast to that.
So $4.50 times the number that he just said that I've already forgotten. Thank you.
Times 148 days.
Times the number of weeks in the school year.
Okay. The number I came up with is 253,854.
That's what I came up with.
Like it when we throw in the numbers.
Yeah.
that's for lunch only, right, Ms. Cavania?
Excuse me, Mr. Aguirre, quick question, just so I understand. We're talking about adding those 2 meals, and we're getting a number for lunch only for those Fridays that we don't have students. Am I correct that in our 5-day week that we currently have, if I understand what was said before, is we already are offering meals to students who are not reimbursed to us? Do we know what that number is? What we're spending as a district on non-reimbursed meals?
For this school year?
Yes.
So we are not spending those dollars. That amount is billed back to Sierra schools.
Okay, so it's not costing us anything right now.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Sepp, I do have another question real quickly. I know that when we surveyed the support staff specific to the transportation, which in my mind bears the greatest impact of going to the 4-day week, we had a number of respondents that indicated that they had no interest in taking on assignments outside of the transportation. We had a number that said they would be interested, trying to keep them whole, of doing other things that are needed by the district badly, that they could be influential on, could assist with. Do we have a strong feeling on the folks that we have talked to that would be uninterested in taking on additional assignments? I know the proof will be in the pudding, but do we have a feeling for how much loss we would obtain through that?
Specific to transportation, when we interviewed each one of our current transportation employees, we know that 6 transportation employees indicated at that particular time that they would not be interested in and or willing to perform additional duties to increase their hours. We have 32 bus drivers. We have several aides as well. So of the other remaining 27 of them ish, they would be willing, and we feel like we could augment some hours to get them to closer to whole. Does that answer your question?
That does. And Dr. Suff, one last question, unless I think of another one. But I know that one of the things that makes a 4-day week viable for me, which I think is our number one issue we face as a district, a state, and as a country, is retaining and recruiting highly qualified, quality teachers. I know that we don't have any specific numbers other than anecdotal, but as far as the administration's feeling, do you think that going to a 4-day week might improve our recruitment and retention?
I do. We had a percentage, around a fourth of our teachers that said that they do not, or they were not in favor of it, but I also think that they may have been unclear about what would be work days or non-work days on Fridays, so I suspect it would be slightly larger. The districts that I spoke to said that they did see an initial increase in ability to fill positions by August, that we did not have as strong a result as they did. And some of them have been in this program for a couple of years now, have said they are no longer seeing this as the primary reason for staying or the primary reason for coming. But I don't really have any evidence other than that. But I would say yes, it could definitely help us recruit, retain.
Thank you.
Can I also add just one point? In the research that I did with other districts, teacher attendance had a tendency to increase. And the reason why is because typically Fridays and Mondays, in that order, are your least attended days for staff. And so if you eliminate Friday from being a possibility to be absent, if you will, what you have is, in the research that I did, was that teacher attendance also increased and student attendance increased. So when you have teacher attendance and student attendance increasing, you have more highly qualified, certified employees in the room more often. And that was just from the teacher perspective. Just wanted to comment, in the research that I did, certainly we did collectively, teacher retention did increase, and the recruitment component specifically was targeted at more experienced teachers, in the 10-year range, specifically, who have some veteran teaching experience.
Thank you. I had forgotten that. I do remember that now. Thank you so much.
So if
Mr.
there's,
President, I have a question.
yep, go ahead, Michael.
Can Dr. Shuff or somebody from staff maybe can clarify? I think in our work session, we recognized that our students on the 4-day would lose a few hours under the different models we kind of identified would work best for us. But I believe there was discussion that those students who have IEPs or some other special need would be able to get those hours back in the extended school year. Did I understand that correctly?
So let me just say that the number of hours that we have in IEP minutes now could be met within a 4-day week, as long as we are fully staffed with the special education staff that warrants the children that we serve. So it does become a staffing issue. In the event like this school year, where we aren't fully staffed in special education, and if the students are not getting all of their instructional minutes for their IEP, we are obligated to provide extended school year. That is not the first choice. That is something we do to make sure we keep each of those children whole with their instructional minutes.
Okay, thank you. I do agree that's probably not our first choice, but we are not going to shortchange those students' IEP minutes if we do choose to go to a 4-day work week.
No, we ethically, we are obligated to provide the children the number of minutes they need to help to overcome their disability and to support them with their learning trajectory.
Okay, no, that's great. And I just think beyond the obligation, it's just it's what we need to do as a board and as a district, is to make sure that those are never shortchanged. Thank you.
So if there's no other discussion on this item, I'd entertain a motion to approve a 4-day work week instructional model for school year 2023. So I make a motion to approve a 4-day school week instructional model for school year 2023. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Did you get who seconded?
They both did. Michael Todd?
I did second that.
Okay. All those in favor? Brian?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
I am also an aye, show that it approved unanimously. Item 6.4, approve board policy IC instructional model, second reading.
President Aguirre, members of the governing board. The first reading for policy IC was brought to the board previously. There are no changes in this second reading. There were no recommended changes offered by the governing board, so it stands ready for your approval.
Questions? Anything? Brian? No? Michael? Paul?
I have no questions.
Nope. I have no questions.
Okay. With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve Governing Board Policy IC Instructional Model.
I'll make a motion to approve Governing Board Policy IC Instructional Model.
I second.
So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Brian?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
I am also an aye, show that approved unanimously. Item 6.5, discussion of 6th through 8th grade science primary instructional resources for 60-day review. Dr. Chef.
Mrs. Camp.
Governing Board President, members of the Governing Board, I am happy to present some information regarding our 6th through 8th grade Science Primary Instructional Resource Committee work. We have met 3 separate times so far this year on October 18th, 25th, and November 1st. Our meetings were open to the public. Our committee members included teachers, administrators, and parent participants. The purpose and the outcomes of the committee are listed in the executive summary. I want just to draw your attention mainly to our outcomes of reviewing the criteria as a committee to score the primary instructional resources and to determine 2 top resources to recommend for 60-day review and teacher pilot. Our science teachers have been without primary instructional resources that are up to date for quite some time. And so this is a really important work that this committee has committed to. All of our meeting agendas and our meeting documents, as well as our meeting minutes, have been posted in board docs. Our committee has previewed over 9 primary instructional resources, scored each of them. I will say my timeline was quite tight and we had to extend because there were so many resources that they wanted to meticulously score and look at to choose the best. During the meetings, the committee members discussed the merits and the possible concerns with each resource. Each of the resources listed below were recommended based on consensus of the committee that reviewed the resources. And so the following resources following our discussion tonight, Open SciEd and STEM Scopes will initiate a 60-day review to gather public input on those resources. That would begin on November 15th, which is tomorrow. And in February, administration would bring forward a recommendation to our superintendent and then to our governing board to consider adopting one of those primary instructional resources for 6th through 8th grade science. And I stand ready for questions.
Brian?
It's not necessarily a question. My concern is we still don't have parents. I mean, that's a concern of mine, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but we need some participation here. If you have pizza or something, I don't know. But anyway, nice work. Thank you. And I look forward to looking over the materials myself.
Thank you.
Ms. Bixler?
I have no questions at this time, but I will reserve the right to, at the point where we talk about agenda items for the board, to ask for something there.
Michael?
Mr. President, I would just like to thank Ms. Camp on her work. I know these are arduous tasks and processes that go through this. And to the rest of the committee, I would echo Mr. Park's concerns about parent involvement. Man, we just feel like we've got to do something to get parents involved. So since Mr. Parks brought it up first, I'll let him make some suggestions perhaps. But otherwise, I just want to thank the work of the committee so far. It is truly exciting that we are updating our curriculum and getting new materials available for our students so that we're up on the cutting edge of the education. That's all. Thank you.
And I have no questions. Thank you, Ms. Camp.
Thank you.
So we are gonna bypass item 6.6. We're not going to be going into executive session or recognizing that. Item 6.7, discussion and consideration to approve governing board resolution urging the governor to call for a legislative session to approve the override of the aggregate expenditure limit. And Mr. Todd, this was for you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I believe, well, first of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Bixler as well for bringing this up on my behalf when I had to short out on a meeting that changed. And I believe in watching that, you wanted it as well. I think this is important that the governor hear from local elected officials. We are the ones who are tasked by legislation to run our district. I think that the legislature this last time around kind of dangled a carrot in front of us with budget, said we're going to be getting some money, and they kind of forgot to open the door to let that money out. So the aggregate expenditure limit is critical. Without it, we don't get the money that was ultimately voted on by our legislature to send our way. And as we well know, it's very critical to properly fund our schools. So if that's good enough, I would motion that we approve this aggregate expenditure limit hearing special session by the legislature that we're asking Governor Ducey to call.
Any other discussion on this item?
Yes, I do have one comment on that. I agree with you, Mr. Todd. It could be no more in agreement that this resolution has to go forward. But I also want to point out the fact that one of the things that was pointed out by the teaching staff within the survey is that they also recognize that the obstacle to fully funding and supporting public education in the state of Arizona falls directly in the lap of our legislature. They need to support public education. And so, yes, I agree. This needs to go forward.
Anything, Brian? With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve item 6.7.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we approve item 6.7, approving a resolution from the Liberty Governing School Board to encourage Governor Ducey to call the legislature back to session and address the aggregate expenditure limit.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Brian?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
I am also an aye, show that approved unanimously. Discussion and consideration to approve developer agreement form. Dr. Schuff?
President Aguirre, members of the governing board, as I know you all are aware, the assessed valuation of land in our school district has increased considerably. We have developer agreements that we are honoring that date back as as long ago as 2003. So there's some aspects to the template language that we've asked our attorney to review and put into place, and also to increase the per rooftop fee or donation, I should say, from the developers. And as more and more developers are starting now to work with us, I would like just the board to have an opportunity to see this ahead of time and give your input on this, because this is essentially what I would be negotiating with individual developers. Of course, there could be some language here, language there that they could come back and we'd need to navigate through. Ultimately, every developer agreement this district brings before the governing board for approval. That is not the custom in all school districts, but we do. So I just want you to see this up front and get your approval on that. The next agenda item is for a specific developer. an agreement, but this one is essentially the template and the form to use.
Questions? Brian?
No questions.
Michael?
Mr. President, I would just like to thank Dr. Schuff for bringing this to the board. As she mentioned, a lot of districts don't do that. I think this is important for us to see, and also for the general public to be able to see. I don't think most people realize that school districts don't get any impact fees. Developers come in, make a lot of money off of building houses, and ultimately they don't really have to do very much to support the education and the strain on the education that they'll cause on the system by building new schools or new houses that we have to provide. My only question here is, should this have a spot that specifies, probably under the recital, it says the city, and we may not always be in the city, so do we need to change that differently, or perhaps change the word and say within the Liberty Elementary School District? For example, Rainbow Valley is not in a city, so I think we might just spell that out and be okay with staff just making that change on it if others agree.
Dr. Schuff?
Thank you for that. We'll look at that.
Okay. With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the item as presented.
Mr. President, I will make. Go ahead.
I apologize. With the exception of Mr. Todd's addition. Sorry about that, Mike.
You're fine.
I'll make a motion to approve the developer agreement form for negotiations with developers, with the exception of the amendment that Mr. Todd has put forward.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Brian?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
I am also an aye, show that it approved unanimously. Item 6.9, discussion and consideration to approve developer agreement with Mountain View Business Park. Dr. Schuff?
So this is the first agreement coming back using this new template. And this particular development is the first of its kind in our school district, and it will be for detached apartment units. I think there is another set of those going in Buckeye. I pass one every day on the way into work along the 101, heading south to the I-10. It's a changing dynamic of what's being offered in real estate today. So here you see the amounts filled into the template, and we have preliminary approval from the developer. They ask that it go and that we get it fully signed and executed, and then send it back to them. So our assumption hopefully holds true that they are just accepting it in whole. But they are also waiting for Buckeye Union to also fill theirs. So it may take a little bit to get executed because I think they want to do them all together. But we're fulfilling our requirement, or what the ask was, if you will, to take it to our board.
Questions? Brian? Michael?
I have no questions.
Paul?
I have no question.
With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve item 6.9.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve item 6.9, the donation agreement with developer agreement with Mountain View Business Park.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Brian?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
I am also an aye, show that approved unanimously. Item 7.1, board comments, agenda topic requests. Brian?
None.
Michael?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to ask that the board consider looking at, between now and the end of the year, ensuring that at least one, possibly two of the professional development days on Wednesdays are dedicated to personal development, relieving teachers from having any expectation other than to personally explore some professional development.
I can back that.
Paul?
Yes, as we talked about the science curriculum and the materials, 6-8, I would like to get a report back from after the committee's completion I would like for us to take in consideration the K-5 involvement in science as well. So as we look at that 6-8 adoption, that we consider how that will filter down to the lower grades as well, so that we have a vertical alignment.
Is there additional support for?
I'll support it.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Upcoming board meetings? Everyone's good for the 28th and the 12th of December, or 28th of November, 12th of December?
Yep.
I'm good.
Okay. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to
Make a
adjourn the
motion that
meeting.
we adjourn the meeting?
I'll second.
I'll second it.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, all together, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Show that we adjourned at 8:39.